Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis. Back again, as always, with my co-host and Hall of Famer Steve Flink. For those that have not listened to our previous episode, we did that Saturday afternoon. We got everyone caught up right until the men's semis, and then the women's final and men's final. We did not cover that because the matches had not been played yet. So we got everyone covered through the tremendous week of tennis up until that very point. The men's semis went on Saturday night. Obviously, a little delay with some rain, but great tournament. This episode, we're going to wrap it up with a discussion of both men's semis, the women's final, and of course the men's final. So, with that, Steve, great tournament. Two worthy champions, matches that we're going to get into. Maybe more one-sided than what everybody would have wished, but still very entertaining nonetheless.
It was. It was a good tournament, and fortunately they got past all those rainy days, those windy evenings. There were some very difficult conditions for the players to deal with, but it was nice at the end, the last couple of days. Although we did, let's not forget, I should correct myself slightly. It was very unfortunate that Carlos and Sinner had to go through a very long rain delay on there. But fortunately, once they returned early in the first set, with Sinner leading 2-1. Then they had a clean slate the rest of the way to play it in better conditions. But tough on those guys to have to endure such a long delay there. But overall, a first-rate tournament.
Yeah, I agree. And the first semi was the Alcaraz Sinner match that you just referred to. Um, Whenever these two play, you're going to get some amazing points throughout. Carlos lost the first set 6-1, and I joked to myself, shoot, he may need like another bee invasion delay or something like that. But because of what happened earlier in the tournament with all the craziness with the bees and
Yeah,
everything, but
yeah.
he for sure got his game back together after that. He won the next two sets 6-3, 6-2. And Sinner's 19 match win streak head to head is 4-4. How'd you see that match play out, Steve?
Frankly, I was disappointed in some ways. They've spoiled us, David. I mean, we think of the great match at the U.S. Open in 2022 where Alcaraz saved a match point, won it in 5 sets. They both played stupendously. The great match in Miami last year. Not every time they've stepped on the court, but they tend to produce gems. This one was a little odd in the sense that, as you alluded to in the first set, it was a 6-1 set. They came back, was 2-1 on serve, and Sinner swept 4 games in a row. And he played very well, no doubt about it. He was playing typically his typical Sinner brand of tennis, percentages, not missing, hitting hard, serving to the precisely. But Carlos was self-destructing a bit in that set. He got a little over anxious. He missed a lot. You did worry about it. On the other hand, this is the same Carlos Alcaraz who lost the first set of the Wimbledon final to Novak Djokovic 6-1 and came back and won in 5. He's very good that way about putting that stuff behind him, just moving on, and he gets it. What he seems to get, David, unlike other players, is there's no more value in a 6-1 set than there is in a tiebreak. Just move on to the next set. So then early in the second, he got the break, changed the complexion of the match. I mean, he made a couple of beautiful forehands behind Sinner and slipping into the net to make the volley. That's where I think he's probably just a little more versatile than Sinner is, that he's his instincts are to go forward a lot. He's more comfortable coming forward in some ways, and he showed it there. And that was the best set of the match, by the way, David. I thought the second, because Carlos had that break, and that was the only break of the set. But then when he served at 4-2, Sinner had a break point, and when Carlos served at 5-3 for the set, Sinner had a break point. And on one break point, Sinner missed a backhand down the line that he probably should have made. And on the other break point, Carlos made a phenomenal backhand down the line on the stretch for a winner. And that was the difference in the second set. But you felt like, okay, Sinner had his chances to break back. I thought that was the one time both players seemed to be playing well at the same time. But then early in the third, when Carlos broke in the third game, Sinner took that spill. He'd already been having a little issue with his left leg, shaking his left leg out. I don't know exactly what the issue was, but seemed to be a little preoccupied with that. Then he takes the fall and falls on his wrist. And I didn't think he played terribly well the rest of the way. Carlos went from strength to strength. He was flowing. He was playing about as well as he possibly could. So you can only imagine if Sinner would have matched that, if we'd seen the best Sinner, then we might have gotten what we were hoping for before the match, which was 7-6 in the third.
Yeah.
Instead, we got a 6-2 set for Carlos. Listen, Don't get me wrong, he was going to be hard to beat anyway, but I really feel like we didn't see anything like the best Sinner in the third. He wouldn't use it as an excuse afterwards. I even heard from other people that in addition to that, he'd been having some kind of an elbow problem midway through the tournament too. So there were a lot of things, niggling things maybe, but enough that put him off. And I don't think he was able to make the third set that competitive because he wasn't threatening Carlos much on his serve. And meantime, Jannik got broken twice himself, which is very unusual for him in a set. So very important win for Alcaraz nonetheless, David, because he needed it, perhaps more than Sinner. You alluded to that 19-match streak. Sinner has won the first major of the year. Carlos hadn't won a tournament since Wimbledon last year, hadn't been in a final since Cincinnati last year. This was a long time coming. I remember when we were talking before the tournament, I felt like surely something was going to break for Alcaraz either here or Miami. Now, I think it may break in both places because I have a feeling for a variety of reasons, I think Carlos might well win Miami now as well. This is such a lift to him. We can get to the Medvedev final in a minute, but winning this title could not have been more timely for Carlos Alcaraz, who in addition to everything else was coming off that ankle injury that threatened to perhaps keep him out of the tournament or certainly prevent him from playing his best. So for him, it was a crucial couple of weeks.
Crucial win, over Sinner again. And now you referred to Medvedev, that second semifinal. To me, that was of the two men's semifinals and the men's final and the women's final. The second semifinal was unbelievable to me. I thought Tommy Paul tactically played Daniil Medvedev perfectly on how he had to play to win that match. And he came out, Steve, on fire. 6-1 in the first set, serve and volley the very first point of the match. You see Medvedev stay 50 feet back from the baseline. I mean, that Tommy wasn't always serving volleying, but he was moving forward every opportunity he could. That first set, 6-1 Tommy. Before we talk about the second set, because I know there's going to be a lot to talk about in that second set, what was your initial reaction when you saw that 6-1 blitz from Tommy?
Shock and awe is exactly what it was. I mean, because we'd seen over the course of the tournament, there'd been all that talk, Tommy himself alluding to the fact that he'd been watching tapes of Edberg, Becker, Sampras, serving volleyers, was getting himself kind of immersed in the volley, you might say, and the idea of incorporating that more into his own game. So we'd seen flashes of it in his earlier matches, especially against Casper Ruud, of attacking, not necessarily serving and volleying, but getting up to the net. Well, with Medvedev, you definitely want to try to employ that serve and volley tactic. He did it beautifully throughout the match. I'm hoping that maybe he'll think about this as a tactic against other guys too, because everybody is so good from the baseline. The line between victory and defeat is so slim when these guys slug it out from the baseline. But Tommy showed himself that not only could he tactically pull it off, but he technically could as well. The quality of his volleying was excellent. But how often can you say, David, that Daniil Medvedev loses a set 6-1, doesn't hold his serve once? The one game he got was a break. Yeah. That's it. So it wasn't just his own attacking, but how well he returned. What amazed me throughout that match about Tommy Paul, David, was his capacity, obviously, to get extremely aggressive on second serve returns. He had Daniel unnerved with that. He was really hitting. These were not chip and charge. These were aggressive return and charge. I mean, bash it and charge. And he hardly missed any. And then, not talked about enough, he got a lot of first serves back. Good first serves from Daniel in the 120s that Tommy returned pretty deep down the middle, and Daniel was having to start from neutral. So I thought was an extraordinary performance. But anyway, let you take us into the second set if you want, and I'll comment on that.
Yeah, the second set to me, Daniil gets that early break. You knew he wasn't going to go down 6-1, 6-2. I mean, that just wasn't going to happen, right? Daniil gets an early break. He jumps up to 4-0, 5-2, and you think, okay, it's fine. We'll just go to a third set. That did not happen, Steve. Tommy fights back 5-all, and now, I mean, he's seeing the finish line. Do you want to take us till that tiebreaker, and then I'll lead you into the beginning of that tiebreaker?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought at 4-love that set, I didn't think that Daniel, I didn't see any way that he could lose the set or not close the set with a 2-break advantage. And Tommy, again, kept making those great returns that we were talking about. and he did such a great job. Saved a couple of set points. Tommy did at 5-6 as well to get himself in that breaker. And then we get into the breaker, and it was such a shame that Tommy rolled his ankle on a really terrific point with a 3-2. He had a 3-2 mini break.
3-2 mini break, yeah.
Yeah, and down 2-1, and he went up 3-2, and that was a crucial point. And you saw, interestingly, he didn't do anything about the ankle right away. So this wasn't so bad that he's hobbling between. He's obviously thinking about it, feeling it swell, but not wanting. He can't stop there. He's got to finish the tiebreak. Didn't get the trainer out to wrap it up until after the breaker. But then right after that, they changed ends, and he missed a forehand volley that he'd been making the whole match. And you wonder whether he's thinking about the ankle. Surely he was. Medvedev played some wonderful points the rest of the way to win that breaker. But that
Tommy didn't win another point, Steve. When he
he ran it right out 7-3. But the point is that it was mainly Medvedev's fine play more than Tommy, aside from that one volley. I give Medvedev the credit, but we'll never know. A lot of people think, oh, Tommy was on his way, he was going to do it. He might have been. Medvedev is a pretty tough guy to put away. It's pretty hard to close him out. He makes you beat him. So I'm not so sure about that, but I felt like Tommy was very sporting about it afterwards. You know, he ended up losing 6-2 in the third. It was more competitive than that score shows.
Well, the first game of the third set, Steve, he was up 40-love and he didn't win.
Well, yeah, exactly. That happens. And, and then he got broken again. And he still was, he was pressing Daniel a lot on Daniel's serve. He continued to make it very hard for Daniel to hold. But it was sort of inevitable because by then the ankle had been wrapped. The trainer had come out. He wasn't looking like he couldn't move. His mobility wasn't bad, but that something like that is weighing on the player's mind. Does he really feel he can go all out? He's afraid to really go full throttle on the run. And so, you just had the feeling there's no way he's going to win this now. Not to mention, it was devastating psychological blow anyway to come from so far back in the second set, get it into a tiebreak. We're leading 3-2 up a mini break, and then not win another point. So, I mean, that was where he needed to win the match. And I can't criticize him because I think Medvedev was terrific in that sequence. But Tommy has shown himself something. Now we want to see, can he put on display something like that against not only Medvedev, but will he try to take it to try to play Carlos that way, try to play Novak that way? How well does it work? You won't necessarily attack as often as he did against Medvedev. But he ought to think about, that he's added a dimension. I think that's a real eye-opener. He's added a critical dimension to his game. And so I think he comes away from this tournament pretty excited about that.
And I mean, he took advantage, right? We're not going to say, I mean, he totally took advantage of the draw with Novak losing early. Now, that being said, Tommy has had previous tournaments where draw has opened up in his side and he did not fully take advantage of it. So this was a great result for Tommy. I think everybody who watched that semifinal match, those first two sets, I mean, loved the way that he played, and we'll see how he does in Miami. I mean, he was really impressive.
But also, let's not forget, he had to beat Nardi, who had beaten Novak. He did a good job there, won it in straight the way he should have. There was no foregone conclusion that he beats Casper Ruud. No. That's a tough match going in. He won that in 3 tough sets. So he did himself proud, and he put himself in a position against Medvedev, who had beaten him a couple of times before, that to really think a little differently now about his ability to compete against the top 3 or 4 in the world. Because I think prior to this match, yes, he beat Carlos last summer. I know that was a good win, and then nearly beat him again. But by and large, against the top guys, I think he's gone out there thinking it's going to take something extraordinary for me to get through this. And more like, I want to make a good showing. I think that way of thinking is gone.
Let's go to the women's final now. And we were hoping, I mean, what a great run from Maria Sakkari, as we, stated in our last episode, which we just recorded a few days ago. First tournament with David Witt. That was our first tournament. I think it was her first tournament with David. Maybe there was one previous, I'm not sure, but great run for her. She had a number of really good wins. Didn't know how she would line up against Iga. Iga, Steve, she rolled against everybody. She didn't lose a set. Closest set I'm looking, I think, is 6-4. Iga played fantastic. She beats Maria 6-4, 6-0. Not really much to talk about in that one, I don't think.
Well, she lost 21 games in the tournament. I mean, she can do that. We've seen that when Iga's at her best, ever since she won her first French, she's shown us that she can go on these rolls in tournaments and just destroy tough opposition. And what happened here was Iga got off to the start we expected, a 3-love and then love 30 on Sakkari's serve, and you're thinking, oh boy, this could be a bagel. And good job from Sakkari to hold on there. She started hitting some good deep forehands, semi-loopers down the middle, making Iga hit the high ball above her shoulders, and extracted some errors that way, and then unleashed off that side herself too. So she got all the way back to 3-all. That, I think, was an important game, that Iga had a confident hold at 3-all. And even though Sakkari then held herself to make it 4-all, that was it for her. Iga closed out that first set easily and then lost 5 points in the second set total. So I just think I don't think that Sakkari, she at one point turned to her corner and said, I don't know what to do early in the second. I think she was maybe a little tired from the long semi with Coco a few nights before. There's any number of reasons, but this is not what we've talked about, her losing finals in the past and how frustrating that was for her, because some of those were against players that she should have had a good chance to beat. This is Iga. This is the best player in the world. I don't think she's discouraged at all. I think the Coco win it was an important win for her, and the tournament overall was important to her to get her back on track.
She's had good track record at Indian Wells. She likes this tournament a lot. She's done well there a few years.
Yeah, she has.
So now we go to the men's final. It's a repeat of the 2023 final. Carlos Alcaraz, Daniil Medvedev. Alcaraz won that match. The score itself, the first set, it was up and down for both players, right? I mean, Medvedev gets up early, Carlos comes back, spectacular points. Carlos wins 7-6, 6-1. The first set, again, just some of these points, it's like, what am I watching? They're so incredible by both players, Steve.
Well, once again, Medvedev showed that willingness as he had against Sinner in Australia. When he knew he was tired from all the 5-setters, the 3 5-setters coming in, he went out and really blasted away. And it was not a typical way for Medvedev to play, but he was just scintillating for 2 sets before he eventually lost in 5. Similar here, where he went out and he decided he was going to hit out freely. He also was going to stand in much closer, and maybe 7 feet closer to the baseline than he normally does on those returns. And initially it worked. He broke Carlos in Carlos's opening service game. Unfortunately, he never broke him again. So you wonder whether he did try to adjust his positioning a little later, but maybe not enough. Maybe he should have gone back further. We'll never know. But that first set, I mean, Medvedev it was one excruciatingly tough service game for him after another. But at 4-all and 5-all, he got to those long deuce games on his serve, and he really stayed in there. And even at 5-4, he had Carlos down 15-30, 2 points from winning the set. Carlos comes up with 3 great first serves in a row. 2 of them were service winners out wide to the backhand and the ad court, and the other one set up a forehand winner with off the weak return. So that was clutch from Carlos, because that set could have gotten away right there. Then they go to the breaker, and Medvedev did a terrific job. He's down 3-zip, and he gets the next 2 points on his serve. He's down 5-2, gets it all the way back to 5-all, and then Carlos comes up with a second serve gem deep to the forehand that elicited an errant return. So that was such a big point, because if Medvedev can grab that point, serve at 6-5 and tuck the set away, at least it gives him some hope. I still strongly suspect that Carlos would have won anyway, but Medvedev needed that set badly. He worked so hard to win it. You could see that he was somewhat deflated in the second. He had Carlos down love 30 in the opening game. He didn't break him. Then Carlos broke him in the next game, and Medvedev was really never in it again. He started missing more, and Carlos it was just free flowing by then. I don't even think he had to think. He didn't have to think at this stage. He was relying on his instincts, and he was making spectacular passing shots and winners on the dead run. And he was Carlos at his very best. So I think it was actually a bit more of that than Daniel's ineptitude. It was more Alcaraz's great shot making flair and skill. So he was confident. He knew he was thrilled to have won the first set, and he was saying in his mind, he just felt like he wasn't going to lose from there. So it's a great it's very uplifting for Alcaraz. It'll be fascinating to watch him in Miami, but also then he'll move out onto the clay where he's had such great success the last couple of years. There's no reason to believe he can't pull in some clay court titles and make a strong bid for Roland Garros as well. So that this tournament might end up being the pivotal moment of the year for Alcaraz.
And everyone was so concerned. He hadn't won a title since Wimbledon, and we're all like, slow down, relax. This kid's going to be fine, and figured it out. And sure enough, he did. Now, listen, we had one of our listeners who really close to us, been listening to us for a long, long time, has a great question, and I'm going to lead it up to it. There's all the news with, the Sinner Alcaraz rivalry, and of course there's Novak. But to step back for 1 second, and then I'm going to ask you this question. Daniil Medvedev, runner-up at the US Open, runner-up at the Australian Open, and runner-up in Indian Wells. Arguably, he's been runner-up at 3 of the past 3 biggest tournaments on the tour. I say arguably, right? You can make arguments.
Oh no, I think it's true. Yeah,
unbelievable that he's been runner-up. We're not talking Atlanta Braves of baseball, or the Buffalo Bills losing 4 Super Bowls in a row. But you cannot ignore Daniil Medvedev and what he's done in these 3 huge tournaments.
No, it's true, but here's the thing. That's the positive part. It's his consistency. He's in the thick of things all the time. But here's a guy that in the first half of 2023 won 5 titles. He has not won one since. He lost that Open final to Novak. Then he lost a couple of finals to Sinner last fall. Then he lost to Sinner in the Australian Open final and Alcaraz here. So his last 5 finals he's lost. That's bruising for someone of his stature. You want to win. In one sense, you're proud of yourself, but that you're always in the finals. But he had started to get on something of a roll in the first half of last year, winning them. Secondly, he's now lost 5 of the 6 major finals, Grand Slam finals that he's played. The only victory being against Novak in the 2021 US Open. No knock on him, because those finals were 2 to Nadal, 2 to Djokovic, 1 to Sinner. He's losing to the cream of the crop. But on the other hand, he's 28 now, and he's saying to himself, I've got to pull off some of these wins. He does not want to end his career with only that 1 title, because he believes he's better than that. And frankly, I do too. So it's going to be very interesting to watch him over the next couple of years, David, to see, because obviously you don't get to all those finals by accident. He's shown that he is clearly among the elite in that upper crust of the top 4, but can he knock off Djokovic, Alcaraz, or Sinner when it really counts again? He's going to have to keep going through those guys to earn those titles.
Okay, so let me ask you the question, and I thought it was a good question. You got Australia now won by Sinner. You got Indian Wells won by Carlos. And the listener's question was, at the end of the year, will Sinner and Alcaraz, or vice versa, the order, it doesn't matter, be ranked 1 and 2 at the end of the year? Notice we did not name Novak there. So what do you think, Steve?
I do believe they will, because Novak at this stage, listen, he got his 8th year-end #1 ranking this past year, which he didn't necessarily expect in the middle of the year, but he had such a great second half of the year with Cincinnati, US Open, Paris, Bercy, and then Turin. He won those 4 titles, which earned him a ton of points, and he clearly deserved to be the #1 player. This year, I don't think his priorities are going to be the same. He's admitted he wants to play less. He just pulled out of Miami. It's another example. So he gets nothing out of this Indian Wells Miami stretch, which going in, we thought he's going to have a good shot to win at least one of those titles and do well in the other. Then, he'll pick his spots the rest of the year. He won't play as much as those 2. They're going to keep winning a lot. So I would expect Novak to finish behind them in the rankings this year, even if he can pull off a slam, which I actually think he will do. So I do expect, all things being equal, no injuries, no serious injuries. Sinner right now is in the draw for Miami, so hopefully whatever those things that happened to him in Indian Wells, he can overcome those and be healthy. And if neither one is out for a long stretch with some serious injury, I think the odds heavily favor that they finish 1 and 2. Now, what's the order? That's a harder question to answer.
I don't know. He didn't ask that. The listener.
No, but I would analyze it. I would just say it'll be extremely close. Sinner, Sinner had the head start because of not losing before this one to Carlos. Carlos is getting hot now and might run off a bunch of titles, but Sinner's then going to come back himself. I think they might have quite a tight run that could go down to the wire in the year-end championships. It might not be decided until then which one finishes number one for the year, but I'm pretty confident they will finish one and two in the world in 2024.
Well, thank you for addressing that question. We get some questions every now and then, and they're fun to discuss on this pod. So thank you, Steve, for that. You know, the as we say, the tour doesn't stop for anyone. We're already going to Miami now. Just a couple matchups that I saw early on the women's side. First round, Simona Halep, welcome back. Thank you. We're all happy she's back. She plays Paula Badosa, the winner playing Arina Sabalenka, so that's going to be interesting. And then on the men's side, you always got Andy Murray playing some crazy good first round match. This is another guy coming back from injury, Matteo Berrettini. He just lost, I think, in the final of a challenger in Arizona. But you know, that should be a fun one. Andy Murray likes to play 3.5-hour matches, whether they're straight sets or 3 sets. So expect a long one.
Well, also an entertaining one. And
yes.
we've seen that in the past from these guys. They've had some really extraordinary struggles. And I as for Halep, I think Halep has a good shot to beat Badosa right off the bat. Not Sabalenka, but I think Badosa has had so many troubles, injuries. She hasn't been able to get on a roll for quite a while. That's a nice opening match because I think it's one that Simona can pull off.
You just don't know how she's going to play in her first match.
Well, it's true, but I think, she's the kind of player. She'll get inspired. The crowd will be behind her. You look at the way she plays. Sure, she doesn't have the match play behind her, but she has the experience to jump right out there and start playing well. And you'd much rather see a player, Badosa, who's not the Badosa of a couple of years ago and is just trying to sort of reinvent herself again, than it would be, let's say, she'd had to open against Sabalenka. I wouldn't have liked that. At least she could conceivably get through this match and then have at least feel like she's getting her bearings when she plays Sabalenka, if that comes off.
Yeah, those few matches are going to be fun. Well, thanks for doing this. And again, for the listeners, I know we only talked about the men's semis and the men's final and the women's final. The previous episode, we talked about everything up until that point, and it was really fun. We talked about a number of players and how they did well at the tournament. This was a fun tournament, Steve, and I expect Miami's going to be, very similar to it. A lot of good work for a lot of good players should give them some confidence going into Miami and going forward.
Absolutely, and I certainly think that this might be one of those years where the Indian Wells victors repeat at Miami. I think there's a pretty decent chance we get another Swiatek win, and I happen to think there's a very good chance that Alcaraz rides this wave and just. I'm not saying he doesn't have any tests in Miami, but I do like his chances to win that tournament.
Well, we shall see. Thanks, Steve, for your time as always. Next time we talk, we'll be talking Miami. All right.
All right. Good, David. Enjoyed it.